Good evening. Welcome to Be Catholic, to our Deacon's Corner. We're back after the holiday break, and we're very happy and filled with joy and enthusiasm to be able to continue our ministry here in the program for RCIA here at St. George, and also to share this with you. Tonight, we are going to talk about relics. This came up as we were discussing last week. We are in our three-part series on the Mass, and at one point in time, relics, the question was raised as far as, hey, is there a relic in our altar here at St. George? And I said, yes, there was. But then I wanted to be able to make sure that we understand what relics are. So first of all, what is a relic? Well, a relic simply is any type of physical matter through which grace may be given. So for instance, we read in 2 Kings about the story of the prophet Elisha. It's called the bones of Elisha, or the bones of Elisha. And the story goes that there was a party coming out to bury a man, and as they were approaching the place of burial, there was the possibility of them being attacked by a band of Moabites, bandits. And so, in fear of their life, they took the dead man and threw him into the tomb or burial place of the prophet Elisha. And as soon as the dead man touched the bones of Elisha, he sprang back to life. And so, scripturally speaking, that would be one of the major stories in the Old Testament that shows that God can dispense his grace to us in any way he wants, including through physical matter. And so, because that grace can come through physical matter, such as the bones of Elisha, or through other things that have touched Elisha, for instance, or St. Peter or St. Paul, and we'll talk about that in a second, we know that it is not done by magic. These aren't magic tricks, and these are not idols. We are not worshiping an idol. We are not worshiping a bone. We are worshiping the God who has chosen to deliver grace to someone through that object. So that object becomes a point of veneration, which means to honor. It does not mean to worship. And so, as we talked about, in the Old Testament, we had that example of the dead man being brought back to life after he touched the bones of Elisha. Earlier in that very same book, 2 Kings, it was Elisha himself who saw the prophet Elijah be lifted up into heaven by the chariots of fire. And as Elijah went up to heaven, he dropped his cloak. Elisha, the man whose bones we just talked about, picked up that cloak, walked over to the river, and slapped the river, and the waters parted. So that shows, once again, that we have different, shall we say, categories of relics. So a first-class relic would be the bones or the physical matter of the person himself. The second-class relic would be something that was personally attached in some way to that person. So, for instance, the cloak of Elijah was associated with Elijah, and so that had power. We see also in Acts of the Apostles, we see that they would put the sick out along the path that they thought St. Peter would walk, so that his shadow would pass over the sick people. And when his shadow touched them, they were healed. Also in Acts of the Apostles, we hear of they would bring aprons and handkerchiefs to St. Paul, and they would touch St. Paul, and they would bring those handkerchiefs and aprons back to the sick, and they were healed. So those would be second class would be something directly associated with the saint, for instance, Peter's shadow. A third class relic would be something that has been touched to either the saint himself or to a first class relic, such as the aprons and the handkerchiefs that St. Paul touched and then were brought to the sick. So as you can see, relics are something that we as Catholics who celebrate using our entire body, we know that God blesses us in the physical world. So as Catholics, we do believe that God can bestow grace on us through physical matter. We venerate those objects. We do not worship them, and they are not idols. We have not created them out of wood or stone ourselves. They were means of receiving grace. And so we don't worship the item, we worship the one who has made that item full of grace. This is Deacon Ed for Be Catholic. We hope that you will join us again. Goodbye.